All right, picture this scene. You open an investment account about 3 years ago. You set up this automatic monthly transfer for $500 every single month for 36 months. No exceptions, no skipping, no excuses. You literally did everything the personal finance books told you to do, right? And tonight, you log in to check your balance. Exactly $18,000 of that money is yours, your hard-earned cash, but the total balance reads $19,000 and change. 3 years of doing the boring, responsible thing, and the market has handed you a measly $1,000? That's less than $30 a month. In this explainer, we're going to look at why this exact scenario is the moment most investors just throw their hands up and quit, and how a slight shift in perspective changes absolutely everything.
Look, most of us believe in the concept of compound interest intellectually. We've all heard it called the eighth wonder of the world. But when you're staring at that screen, watching $500 a month produce almost nothing, the math starts to feel, well, rigged. But here's the thing. It isn't. There is something compounding does to you that nobody warns you about. The growth curve doesn't just sneak up on you. It actively hides from you. The first half of the chart looks like a gentle slope. I mean, it's almost flat against the bottom of the page. But then, the second half looks like a vertical wall going straight up into the sky. And the sad truth is, the reason most people never reach that vertical wall is simply because that initial slope feels so incredibly disappointing.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the actual workload over a 30-year timeline. If you invest that same $500 a month at a historical 10% annual return, just look at year one. You contributed $6,000 and the market gave you about $300. You did 95% of the heavy lifting. But let's fast forward to year 30. The gap here becomes almost embarrassing. You've contributed $180,000 in total, but your balance? It's approximately $1.13 million. The market produced $950,000 of that wealth. By year 30, you're only doing 16% of the work. You see, in those early years, your stack of money is simply too small to multiply meaningfully. There's no compounding to celebrate yet because, frankly, there's almost nothing to compound on. To truly wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the most famous illustration of exponential growth in all of mathematics. Take a single penny, just 1 cent. Now imagine doubling that penny every single day for 30 days. When most people hear this, they picture a moderate pile of money at the end of the month, maybe $10,000 or $20,000 if they're feeling really generous. But let's look at what is actually happening inside this timeline. Here is the part that perfectly mirrors that frustrating 3-year investment account we talked about. On day 15, the exact halfway point of the experiment, that single penny has become approximately $164. Think about that. Halfway through the timeline, and you only have $164. If you were the person doing this experiment and someone walked up to you on day 15 and asked if you were getting rich, you'd have felt like a complete failure. From the inside, the math looks totally pathetic. But here is the final reveal on day 30. Over $5.3 million. The back half of the calendar created 33,000 times more wealth than the front half. And this brings us to the golden rule of exponential math, which honestly might be the most important takeaway of this entire explainer. Every single doubling is larger than all the previous doublings combined. That final jump from 2.6 million to 5.3 million added more wealth in a single day than the previous 29 days stacked together. And guess what? Your investment account behaves the exact same way.
So, the big question is, how do we stop obsessing over our frustratingly slow dollar amounts and start tracking the math that actually matters? Well, we use a neat little piece of arithmetic from the 15th century. It was first detailed by an Italian mathematician named Luca Pacioli way back in 1494, and it's called the Rule of 72. Here's how it works. You take the number 72, divide it by your expected annual rate of return as a whole number, and the answer is roughly the number of years it takes your money to double. That's the whole formula. It is the ultimate mental shift to completely change how you view your financial progress.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the rule applies to real life right now in 2026. The S&P 500 has historically returned roughly 10.4%, meaning your money doubles every 7 years. Got a high-yield savings account at 4%? Okay, that takes 18 years to double. But now, consider the impact of credit card debt, which averages around 24%. Divide 72 by 24, and you get 3. Your credit card debt is doubling every 3 years. Compounding is an entirely neutral engine. The exact same math that builds massive wealth at 10% will viciously destroy your finances at 24%.
Let's map this out to make it super concrete. Imagine a 30-year-old who makes a single $10,000 investment at a 10% return and then never adds another penny. Following our rule of 72, it doubles every 7 years. So the balance jumps to 20K, then 40K, then 80K. By age 58, it's sitting at $160,000. By age 65, it's $320,000. Now look really closely at where the wealth actually showed up. That final doubling, just between age 58 and 65, added $160,000 all by itself. The final 7 years of that account produced more wealth than the previous 28 years combined.
What is truly fascinating about this timeline is how perfectly it applies to the most famous investor on Earth, Warren Buffett. Did you know 99% of Buffett's immense wealth came after he turned 50? Seriously. Did Buffett suddenly discover a magic secret formula or become vastly better at picking stocks on his 50th birthday? Absolutely not. His base had simply grown large enough for those later stage doublings to start generating billions. He just stayed in the chair for decades. You don't need Buffett's brain for this, you just need his patience. Time is literally the one resource a young person has way more of than a billionaire.
But let's see how brutal the math gets if you surrender that time. Assuming you max out a 2026 IRA contribution of $7,500 a year at a 10% return, starting at age 25, yields approximately $3.6 million by age 65. But if you delay just 10 years and start at 35, you end up with $1.3 million. That single 10-year delay literally costs you $2.3 million in retirement wealth. There's no way around it. The longer you wait, the more punishing the math becomes, simply because you are robbing yourself of those massive, lucrative back half doublings. All right, let's pivot to Section 2, the enemies of compounding. These are the silent wealth destroyers designed to shake you out of the market and quietly wreck your plans before the good part of the curve ever arrives. The absolute sneakiest of these enemies? Fees. They look tiny on paper, sure, but they compound against you just like returns compound for you. Let's say over 40 years, investing $7,500 annually, an index fund with a dirt cheap 0.05% fee leaves you with $3.5 million. But a fund with a seemingly small 1% fee, that leaves you with just $2.5 million. Think about that. That 1% fee didn't just take 1% of your wealth, it confiscated a devastating 28% of your total wealth. Every single basis point you pay in fees is a basis point that doesn't get to double.
And the other enemies are just as relentless. Inflation acts in reverse. With 2026 rates sitting around 3.8%, inflation is halving your purchasing power every 19 years. Then you've got human psychology, the behavior gap. Panicking during market crashes or buying in because of FOMO at all-time highs, that costs the average investor 1 to 3% annually. And finally, lifestyle inflation. Every time you get a raise and instantly go lease a luxury car or upgrade your apartment, that newly absorbed money never even gets to start its doubling cycle. It's a massive behavioral trap.
So to survive those agonizing early years and actually beat these enemies, we really have to listen to the late Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner. He famously and bluntly said, "The first $100,000 is a bitch. Find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Why $100K? Because at a 10% return, $100,000 produces $10,000 of growth per year. It's that magical threshold where the market finally starts pulling its weight alongside your own contributions. It is literally the required price of admission to get to the back half of the curve."
So, what's the game plan? The absolutely crucial point here is implementing a behavioral system to survive the disappointing front half of the journey. First, track doublings, not dollars. Hitting $16,000 from $8,000 is the exact same mathematical victory as going from $800K to $1.6 million. Celebrate it. Second, internalize that $100K threshold. Make it your primary target. Third, reframe those early, monotonous years as construction. You're not failing, you are pouring the concrete foundation before the visible walls go up. And finally, automate everything. Do not rely on fleeting motivation. Set up automatic transfers so doing the right thing is just your default setting. But, all of this advanced math and system building brings us to one deeply uncomfortable reality. Because compounding is a multiplication function, anything multiplied by 0 is still 0. If you're excitedly tracking your 10% market gains while simultaneously carrying credit card debt that is doubling every 3 years at 24%, the math is fundamentally working against you. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If the entire structure of your future wealth rests on the basic financial literacy of your present, have you actually poured a solid foundation, or are you just building a really beautiful house on top of a sinkhole? Think about it.